I'm Charles Dennis, Director of ITDA. In the previous clip we talked about what is theory. That's an important part of our overall topic of research. In this clip we're going to talk about building a model. How a model can be used to build theory and to test theory.
In the previous clip we talked about what is theory. In this clip we're going to still talk about what is theory, but move on to using theory to build a model. For example, we might be trying to model performance in examinations. That depends on intelligence. But perhaps more interesting is to find out whether the performance depends on how well we study. So if someone studies well, that might affect performance. And people who are intelligent study more. Now, it's mediation if that's the route by which intelligence affects performance. It's full mediation if then intelligence only works through that route of study effectiveness and not directly through performance. Using structural equation modelling, it's very straightforward to evaluate whether that mediation happens or not. And as opposed to that, we'll also look at moderation, which is whether intelligence influences performance more when you have a good professor or tutor. And if it does, that's called moderation, that intelligence has a bigger effect with one condition, i.e. a better professor, than the other. So we'll look at those with an actual example. Taking a research question, for example, what factors influence acceptance of internet banking, and how do those factors vary between different cultures? Could be a very important question for banks to ask. This could be studied based on an existing model called Technology Acceptance Model. Modelling adoption of information systems. It's been used for many different purposes, but it should be possible to use it for uptake of internet banking. People don't use a system for its own sake, but rather for the benefits that they expect to get from it. This could be true of internet banking, for instance. So one hypothesis might be that the usefulness of internet banking will affect consumers' intentions to adopt internet banking. Now that's shown in the model by an ellipse with perceived usefulness and an arrow drawn to attitudinal intentions, and that illustrates one hypothesis. We're calling that H1. But that relationship might be different in different cultures. That's our moderation hypothesis. For Saudi customers, they're less used to obtaining benefits from internet banking. So we hypothesize that perceived usefulness would have more influence for Saudi customers than, say, for UK customers. And this is how that's shown in the model. The arrow goes from perceived usefulness to attitudinal intentions, as before, but there's a moderation hypothesis, an arrow going from national culture to the arrow between usefulness and intentions, and that's the moderation. In one culture, the usefulness will have more effect than in the other culture. So that's starting our model on the way. With using technology acceptance model and other theory like trust, we can build a complete model of our hypotheses, which we will then test. Building up those things in the model, if they're in the literature review and they don't have an arrow, don't have them. If the model is too complex, don't want to be any bigger than what we've just seen, for instance, then hold the boring bits constant. That's called control variables. Just manipulate the others. And for each ellipse, that's each variable, you either manipulate it or collect data from concrete indicators of it. And we'll be talking about those indicators with a little example. So, to test your theory, you can test the arrows. That means it's fairly straightforward to design a model which is going to you're going to use to answer your research questions. Even if you're doing qualitative, you can still test the arrows, but building it up like a legal case rather than using statistical reliability and validity. Whether quantitative or qualitative, you still need to ensure reliability and validity. So in the next section, we'll talk about scales for using models based on quantitative or structured questionnaires.